3, 2, 1.
Hello, 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 Santa Barbara. It's your chantress of everything valuable and beautiful, Elizabeth Stewart. And I have just to tell you guys that this past week we had a really interesting meeting. So I'm in a condo. We have an HOA annual meeting. And this time everybody was on Zoom. And there were people who are not used to actually being on Zoom, not used to performing for a camera. And it was so funny. I mean, John and I just died laughing. It was just like, you know, that commercial, I think it's for some kind of insurance or other, and they've got a bunch of people together trying to do a sales pitch on Zoom. And, you know, you've got one like Garrett where, you know, all you see is the nostrils or the you know, mouth moving. And it was just like that. It was like these older people had just no sense. The one lady was like, okay, how do I do this? All I see is launch meeting. And it was just this incredibly difficult way to communicate. Anyway, that very day I received some emails thanking me for the program I did with Mark Sylvester and Garrett Blair, in which we talked about ways to communicate while on Zoom. And they came from it from a standpoint of actor mentor, or I should say performer mentor situation, in which Mark hired Garrett to show him how to perform for a TED Talk. And Garrett over the years has developed his own platform in which he counsels corporate boards and private individuals how to use their bodies, their voices, their eyes, their presentation skills to best carry forth who they are. And I thought, wow, how interesting this is. It's a whole business devoted to helping us communicate better, Garrett Blair's business. Likewise, I received some emails from people saying, you know, I wonder if you could have Garrett back on, because one woman, a listener, said, I would be really interested, and this is my surprise attack on Garrett right now. She said, I wonder if Garrett could talk about this. I have an older mom. She's in a nursing home. The nurse will come in on Christmas Day with a laptop, and I have about 3 minutes to communicate how I've missed her, because I haven't been able to see her in 9 months. And how do I best do that? How do I come across with my most authentic, loving self in 3 minutes to an older lady who is not used to looking at her children on a 3x5 card? Essentially, that's what you get when you get Zoom.
Sure.
So I want to introduce the great Garrett Blair, communications guru. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about how best to communicate. I want to throw that scenario at him. Garrett, my listener has 3 minutes to say something loving to her mom. She hasn't seen her mom in 9 months. How does she do that?
Well, you know, that's a big question that I think a lot of people are struggling with right now. First, thanks for having me back. I'm thrilled to be back here and continue the conversation.
By popular demand.
Yeah, this is great. You know, I think there are a couple things to think about. First of all is that, you know, this is an opportunity to share how you feel. So don't be afraid to emote. Don't be afraid to allow your feelings to come out through this device. While it is a device and it isn't actually face-to-face, we still have those emotions, and you know, you shouldn't allow any concern about using the device to get in the way of expressing how you feel. But I think technically, in terms of using the device when communicating, think about the experience that you'd want for that person. So here your mother is in the nursing home and you want her to see you. You want her to feel like you are looking at her and that you're communicating directly with her. So first and foremost, I'd suggest making sure that you know where in your device the camera is, and look into the camera and speak into the camera as if you are talking directly to that person, to your mother. She will then look at the screen and see you looking right out at her. And that eye contact is going to be huge toward communicating that emotion. You yourself are also going to want to look and see the face of your mother in this nursing home at the holidays. So when you do look at the screen to look at her face, say that that's what you're doing. You know, Mom, it's been great. I'm actually going to look at my screen for a second to see you because I want to see how you're doing. You look great. You look fantastic. Oh, I love that bow in your hair. I don't know, something like that. And now I'm going to look back in the camera so I can look right at you. So those would be my first two thoughts. You know, make sure that you're clear about looking into the camera, allowing yourself to express that emotion, say what you feel, say what you think. And then if you're going to look at the screen to see her, tell her that's what you're doing. I think some other things that I might quickly add is make sure that that your camera, that your device picks you up in a way that she can really see you. So you've got lighting in front of you as opposed to behind you. You're not sitting in front of a window. Your face is not too close to the camera and distorts your image. If you get too close to the camera, your nose and your cheeks are going to start to look a lot bigger, and that can be uncomfortable for people when they're used to seeing regular facial proportions. So make sure you're about 12 to 18 inches away from the camera, that your face looks the way you want it to, and that you're communicating directly into the camera to communicate that emotions and make her feel like you're looking at her. How's that for a start? Does that help out?
It's great, but you know what I want, if it's possible. So I'm looking at you, and if people are interested, Richard records these on video as well. So this is radio, but I think you are a great enough communicator to handle what you would say to your mom in this situation. So I'm going to test you out.
Okay. What would I say to my mom if I was looking at her and she's in the nursing? Oh my gosh. So the point of this show is to get me to cry. Is that what you're saying? We want emotion. Okay. If my mom was sitting there, what would I say? I'd look into the camera and I'd say, hi, Mom. Oh my gosh. How are you feeling? Please tell me something that's going on there that you're enjoying. Is there one thing about what's happening there that you're enjoying? And I want to tell you two things that are going on here. I want to tell you something great that's happening with Pippa, your granddaughter. She is learning to speak all sorts of words, and they're really cute. And I want to tell you about some cool things that's going on in my business. So that's where I'd start.
I love it. I love it because I know for a fact, I've my dad, who passed away from COVID, was in a nursing home, and when I'd call, he'd just tell me all the crummy things that happen.
Yeah.
I love that you give the platform of tell me the good things, or is there one good thing that you can say? I mean, whether it be, you put into the mind then a tenor for the conversation, that this is going to be an upbeat conversation. I'm going to tell you two good things if you just tell me one good thing.
Right. There's
So
also
I
a
love
game you
that.
can play. You can go back and forth and just say, hey, listen, I know this is a crummy time, but tell me something that's not wrong with your life. What's not wrong? And then you can get really small. Well, I have a roof over my head and I've got a blanket wrapping me, keeping me warm. You can get into the really small things that make it great. That's a great question to ask in those situations too.
Fantastic. So here's another scenario that I hope you'll help us out with. So I know that you've got children, and let's say, for example, I have another email request to ask you. Here's a grandmother, and she's only met her grandson once or twice.
Mm-hmm.
And he is almost 2. He's, fairly vocal, but he's not as vocal as you or I. And she's going to communicate a Christmas message on Zoom. So what does she say? How does she? Now, she's got some time. It's not a 3-minute window like in the nursing home where they're saying, everybody on this floor is getting 3 minutes. This grandmother's got some time. So she can actually start to think about ways to amuse the child so he remembers her when she actually sees him in person.
Mm-hmm.
So what can she do on Zoom, in your opinion?
Again, first thing I always come back to is make sure you're looking into the camera. That's just always first number one. And then, if you're recording something or if you're setting something up and you want to create an experience, practice it ahead of time. Are you showing something? Are you doing an activity? Is there a message that you have that you want to say? practice a little bit, give it a little bit of preparation so that in that time, you're not flustered by the device and the interaction, and instead you're very clear on the message that you're trying to put forth. That would be my first thought. You know, this is a unique device. You've got to think about and be careful with how you use it. So we do have to do a little preparation and get ready to be on the device when we're ready to communicate.
So I have a technical question. Maybe Richard knows the answer to this, and as well as Garrett. You know, I have a new grandchild, and I tend to speak in person to the grandchild by using a different voice. You know, you go up and down. Can Zoom capture that? I mean, is the bandwidth big enough to capture, you know, the voice that we do when we talk to babies? Can Zoom do that?
Yeah, I think if you go too high, it starts to have trouble with, you know, the auditory software, but it can handle differences in pitch. But what I'd say is, you know, talk to your child like they're a person. Talk to your grandchild like they are a person. You know, especially with my kid, you know, you always get into the sing-songy kind of voice, right? Oh, do. But, you know, they're a person. So talk to them like they're actually another human being too. That helps.
Fantastic. So Garrett, what we've learned so far is invaluable. We learned to look into the camera, and what I really like is, you know, how you right now, I mean, people that are used to using Zoom, they know how to train themselves so they're not looking at their own face.
Mm-hmm.
Big problem. So you look in the camera, you try to not look at yourself. When you want to look at the other person, that means you got to take your eyes a good 6 to 8 inches different to look at that little square where they are.
Yeah.
So what Garrett is suggesting is you say, for 1 minute now, I'm going to look at you. So my eyes are going to change, Mom.
Yeah.
And you actually give her the heads up so she thinks, oh, well, you're not distracted and looking at the dog for because so you give that heads up. So, and then also another thing that Garrett is suggesting is that you light yourself from the front, and that you present yourself about 8, what did you say, about 8 to 12 inches from the camera?
Depends
and
on it depends on the device, but usually you don't want to be any closer than 12 inches. 18 inches is pretty good. The larger the device and the bigger the scope, you want to be 18 to 24 inches away. Any closer than that, you start to distort your face, which for people who aren't used to looking at the screen can be an unnerving experience.
And then the other cool thing that I just learned is speaking to children on this device, to actually speak to them as they are intelligent people.
Mm-hmm.
And to actually use all the tools that you use with adults. Look at them. If you are going to entertain with a video pre-prepared, and then perform it on Zoom, that you are, according to Garrett, you are going to practice that. And so, you know, practice that a couple of times. When we get back, I want to talk about what Garrett's opinion is on how to use your body on Zoom. So Richard and I were talking about our experience with interviewing like 8 to 9 actors that were performing It's a Wonderful Life. And they were doing this all on Zoom with 8 to 10 different little squares. And what one of the performers said to me was, I use my hands, my shoulders, and the way I carry my upper body so much more. I act from the, you know, bust line up.
Sure.
And I want to know how he is going to suggest to us how to use our bodies to communicate authentically during the holidays with this world of Zoom that we're faced with, especially in the present lockdown. I'm so lucky to have Garrett Blair talk to us about ways to communicate because of the current lockdown. Invaluable expertise. Richard, let's go to a quick break. When we get back, Garrett's going to share a little bit how we use our bodies to communicate authentically on Zoom. Don't turn that down. Welcome back. It's Elizabeth Stewart, and I'm joined by expert communications guru Garrett Blair. He's talking to us today on his wealth of experience, first from the stage and now for years of consultation with some of the best presenters on the TED radio stage. And he's talking to us a little bit about our present communications conundrum. So we are now in lockdown for sure. we're not able to visit, and we are all thinking, how best to present either a video short, a Zoom message. And after Garrett was on my show a couple of months ago, I had some really wonderful email questions from listeners. If you ever have Garrett back, I want to know how to communicate with my mom, who has a 3-minute window for me to give her a message in a nursing home. I want to know how to communicate with a grandson who doesn't really know me because he was born, he's fairly young during this pandemic, on Zoom. And now I want to ask Garrett, his thoughts on how best to use the body that we have on Zoom. So what do we have? We have from the bus line up. And basically that's what we got. And we don't have the advantage of depth. We don't have the advantage of the surprise, turn around and then, backwards and forwards and communication that we usually have in person. Mm-hmm. So Garrett, give us some advice. How do you use your body when you speak on Zoom?
Well, first, if I may, I just want to jump back real quick to that grandparent who's interested in trying to build that connection with their child. I just want to offer a quick experience. My parents also have been feeling that anxiety with their grandchildren. And what I will say is it's not something that we really have to worry about. The grandkids are going to know their grandparents. We hop onto a Zoom call with my grandparents, with my parents, the two of them are sitting on the couch. And now my daughter can point up and say, in Dutch, oma, opa, she points to her grandparents. They are going to know who you are, even though this is a strange time. So just whatever kind of connection you're going to make, they're going to figure out. And eventually they'll figure out that you don't live in the screen, that you do have a home. That'll come to them eventually, but don't worry, the connection is going to be built there. But in terms of, using our bodies and presenting ourselves on camera, I want to go through a couple of ideas first. The first thing is, this is not a real face-to-face interaction. It is an approximation and substitution of a face-to-face interaction. Because it feels like it's face-to-face, we engage with regular face-to-face communication cues, as we would if we were in the same space with someone having a real conversation. Because we engage with those cues and our brains are primed to receive those cues from others, it looks at the screen, it looks at the camera, and it sees the camera skewing and miscommunicating the cues from the other person, right? So when we think about trying to create an authentic connection for the other person, we in fact have to sort of step outside of the regular normal communication paradigm and engage in behaviors that account for the device. So when we're talking about our body language, we've got to think about, if I was in the same place with someone and I had my hand or my head in my hand, it would look like I'm relaxed and I'm listening and I'm involved. However, on camera, my head in my hand looks like I'm not interested. It looks like my
You're right.
Somewhere else.
You're right. Oh my gosh, Richard, did you hear that? So it's so interesting. So what Garrett just did was he showed us a communications fail.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it.
Yeah, and so what he said was, if you're on Zoom and you do this, Richard, can you see me?
Mm-hmm.
And if I was sitting across from you at the dinner table, you'd probably say, oh my gosh, Elizabeth is really interested in what I have to say. But if you do this on Zoom, you look bored.
Right.
You look
bored.
like, oh, I'm just ready to fall asleep.
Yeah.
And it's a communications fail. It's using the old skill in this new program device that doesn't fly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, there's a whole host of cues. There's a whole host of things that we do naturally that on camera are skewed and confused. So you've got to give time to notice, how do I come across when I do these regular things? I attend to them. So I try and do a better job of sitting up straight and engaging my body, which communicates that I'm listening, as opposed to like leaning forward on my elbows, which ends up looking like I'm bored. I try and keep my focus around the camera, because if I'm listening to you, but I'm also looking out the window, well, now it just looks like I'm totally into something else, even though I'm looking out the window listening to you.
Yeah.
We have to pay attention to how our cues get confused by the camera and then adjust our behavior so that we're not just paying attention, you're communicating your attention.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So you're not just paying attention, you're communicating attention.
Yes.
So here's what we just learned. We learned not to put our head in our hand. and because it looks like we're bored. We learned not to. John in the background's going, yeah.
I saw Richard.
Yeah, Richard looks bored. He's doing that right now. We learned to sit up straight and be attentive, like how we used to fool our teachers at school.
Yeah.
Right.
We were out there daydreaming, but if we sat up straight and looked the teacher straight in the eye, she'd think, oh, you guys are really, really paying attention.
Yeah.
So let's sit up straight and pay attention, but we're not necessarily paying attention, we're communicating, paying
You're
attention.
communicating. Well, and the thing with this device is when you work to communicate your attention, you are actively going to be more focused and committed to the conversation. You know, it's going to put us right there. And the other thing to think about is you talked about hand gestures and things like that. These things are going to feel weird because I'm not behaving within that normal face-to-face communication paradigm. Raising my hands up to gesture a little bit inside the frame or doing bodily movements up here, that is going to feel different than what it usually feels like when I actually talk to someone. And that discomfort is not bad. It's just I'm doing a new type of interaction.
Okay, so can you explain that a little bit more, Garrett? So here you are. Give me an example. So now what Garrett just did, dear listener, was he raised his hand, sort of a dolphin arising from the sea movement. And he said, that was not something that I normally would do, but it communicates what? What does that communicate on Zoom?
Well, think about what the gesture would be. If I'm reaching out my hands to say, hey, everybody, join me. But when I do that, my hands are below the frame. You're not going to see it. So I've got to put those up in front of me. And if I reach out too far, well, now my hands are enormous because they're right up against the camera. So I've also tucked my elbows in so that I go, oh, hey, come on, join me, everybody. So the modifications to normal gestures that we have to attend to so that we can, communicate those gestures appropriately through the device.
Right. So it's not come on in, everybody, because this looks like you're swatting flies.
Right.
It's, come and join me.
Right.
It's within your whole sort of body plane right here. It's what, about 12 inches,
Yeah.
about 6 inches outside your shoulders
Mhm.
that you're communicating that. Another great. So Richard, what are you doing? Oh, you're Richard's putting himself into a little box there with his hands. We got to cut a quick break. I've got another scenario that I'm going to spring upon Garrett Blair. And so when we get back from the break, Garrett's going to tell us about how we're going to communicate with business colleagues our good wishes, and that we're not talking about loved ones here, but we're talking about business acquaintances, how we're going to suggest that we are interested in their lives without becoming too up close and personal. How do you make that a distant sort of Christmas greeting, Hanukkah greeting? How do you make that a distance thing without actually communicating a lot of emotion? We were now learning previously how to communicate some emotion with our grandkids, our elderly parents, but now we're going to reverse the scenario, and we want Garrett to explain to us a corporate situation on Zoom. So don't turn that down. I'm speaking this hour with communications guru Garrett Blair. And during the lockdown, I had a number of emails saying, would you bring him back on your show, Elizabeth? He's so valuable in regarding how we communicate on this new platform of Zoom. Don't turn that down. Back in a minute. Welcome back. It's Elizabeth Stewart, and I'm speaking this hour an invaluable conversation with Garrett Blair, who's made it his life's work to teach people how to communicate better. And he's really got his plate full these days because he's been in demand trying for people to give examples of how we speak best on Zoom. How he started this was he was coached for some of the TED Talks. And so he was working with a certain proscenium stage to begin with, but now he's got a proscenium stage of 3.5 by 5 inches, which is the Zoom square, if he's lucky. And so we're learning how best to communicate. And my question to him was, making a few quick calls on Zoom to our business colleagues. Now, I've got some colleagues in London, and I want to communicate wishes to them. I want it to be more personal than an email, but I don't want to interfere in their family celebrations. And I want to make it something quick and concise and businesslike. So how do I do that, Garrett?
Well, just to be clear, are you saying you're preparing a recording that you're going to be sending out on video, or is this a live call that
No,
you're?
this would be something live where I'm calling just to say, you know, we've got a, for example, with my colleague in London, I've got a prearranged time. You know, you and I are going to speak and give our good wishes at X hour, blah, because of the time change. So we're going to do that, and then, you know, that's it. So what my question is, how to communicate it a bit in a business-like manner.
Sure. You know, I think the first thing to understand is that we are all, most of us, still in our homes. You know, so there is a professionalism from within your home that is different than when you're in the office, right? So the first thing to do is make sure that where you're zooming from looks like your home, but is clean and professional, right? Don't call your coworker from your bedroom with, you know, laundry draped over the headboard, right? You know, and not in your pajamas. Although the other side is true, you don't want to kind of try and recreate your office in a suit and a tie when you're sitting in your kitchen, right? So there's a middle ground in there. You want to make sure that you look professional, but at the same time, you are home, so you still have to acknowledge that that's the truth, and you're going to look professional from home. One of the things that I tend to do when I'm hopping on the calls with, you know, and I'm coaching with employees or working with corporate clients, is I'll ask them, you know, what are they planning? Well, how are things different, right? What is your holiday plan? Or, you know, it was just recently Thanksgiving. So, you know, what are you deciding to do for Thanksgiving? Assuming that people have done the work to think about how to be safe and what's best for their family, and start there. What are you planning for the holidays? You know, and how do you feel about that? And then, oh, and are you excited about that? What's one good thing that you're looking forward to in that experience? You know, you don't want to get into the, oh my gosh, my mother's all upset because she can't come over. And, you know, you don't want to be oversharing, but you do want to offer a little bit of space into, let's talk about our experience and what we're looking forward to this holiday.
It's so funny that you should mention about the environment and the home environment, home office, because I've done in my past expert witness work in court. And so somebody's got a loss, for example, a fire loss. You know, I've done a bunch of expert witness work like that. And we had a session, the Appraisers Association had a session with a body of attorneys that prepare expert witnesses for trial. And they were saying the one big mistake that everybody makes, because expert witnessing is now done on Zoom, Garrett.
Mm-hmm.
The one big mistake that all of the expert witnesses make is they leave too many visual clues in the environment to the kind of person you are. And it leads the other side to ask questions. And I asked, you know, give me an example, counsel. And one said, well, you know, this is an example I'll give you. This is an appraiser who sets themselves up as being an expert in certain antique porcelains.
Okay.
And yet on their bookshelf behind, they've got like hunting trophies and boating awards and all high level type A sporting things. And so it put a doubt into the opposing side's mind that how can a person who's a outdoor high energy hunter fisherman kind of guy, how can he be an expert in fine porcelain? There was a disconnect. And it's possible, of course it is.
Well, and
but
I think
it put up so that expectation was there, and it had nothing to do with what the guy was saying. It had only to do with the clues behind him.
right. Well, let me point to, you know, a couple of things. You know, the first is, so my experience is in theater, directing, performance, education. That's sort of where I got, you know, where this sort of career came out of was that experience from my past. And that you're always focused on the experience of the other person and what are they going to be going through. So when you're placing yourself in an environment that is your frame, this is what people are going to see. You have to ask yourself, what experience do I want them to have? Actually, in my you know, live video conferencing training course, one of the videos talks about, you know, what is your story? What is it that I want you to think about me when you first see me? And what experience do I want you to have when you first see my frame? And then I'm crafting that frame and I'm crafting my background to achieve that experience and to achieve that first impression. So someone's going up in front of court and they're an antiques expert. Well, they've got to think about, everybody's going to be thinking that that's who I am. I then need to project that idea in my image and make sure that the things that are in my environment project that kind of thing. And the same thing is true when you're talking to your coworkers. You know, I talk about find the little things in your life that you want to put up, right? So in my frame, I'm going to point out, you know, I've got, let's see over here, I've got a Star Trek doll because I'm a big Trekkie. I've got the Saturn V rocket made out of Legos. I've got some other trinkets and things that speak to who I am, you know, build depth as a character. But if I'm getting in front of a very professional person and I want to make sure that they know exactly what I'm talking about, I may take out the Star Trek doll, or I may remove the silly book over my shoulder, because I'm thinking about what their experience is and what do I want them to know about me, right? So when you are getting on this call to wish someone a happy holidays, you know, with, you know, from work, think about what are they going to think about when they see my frame, and how can I have an effect and craft that experience for them.
As a matter of fact, Richard, I got to tell Garrett. So this one particular case we were talking about, where the attorney presenting somebody who had lost everything in the fires, and you know, this is my poor old lady that's lost everything in the fires, and you know, her husband who, you know, is half destitute because of, you know, all of his business records going and this sort of thing. And in the background, she's got a picture everybody can see so clearly, a huge blow up of their yacht with them on it.
Right.
And so basically that kind of blew the case right there.
Yeah.
Just that little thing. Well, it wasn't little, but it was a, you know, a big fail, because you know, you can't say you're poor and then have a picture of you stepping off your yacht.
Right.
So
well, you know, in the courtroom that you're talking, I mean, that's just a great example. Like, people are going to notice all those details. So you need to pay attention to those details, because that's what you're communicating in your frame, right?
So Richard, I think we got to go to quick break. I've got another question from another listener when we get back for Garrett. And this one is really a doozy, because I'm actually not going to tell him now so he can think about it. So let's go to quick break. When we get back, I'm going to spring on a question, how to communicate on Zoom. And our fabulous, fabulous Garrett Blair is talking with us, communications guru. I had to find him very quickly when I heard there was a lockdown. Because I just thought this is a fantastic time to get Garrett back on the air, talking to us about how best to communicate on this device, which is Zoom.
Yeah.
Don't turn that dial. Back in a minute. Welcome back. It's Elizabeth Stewart. I'm talking with communications guru Garrett Blair. He's actually got a platform. His life's work is devoted to teaching people how to communicate better, how to divulge their authentic selves on their best foot forward. And when the pandemic hit 9 months ago, 10 months ago, he actually did an about face and started to counsel people how to use this device in their business and in their lives on a corporate level. So some of his clients, the reason I was introduced to him is he had a client who is an incredibly successful entrepreneur who I happened to have on the show, and said, you know, who do you know that knows something about communication? Well, I know Garrett Blair. So we're talking today with Garrett. Now, Garrett, here's my question from a listener. She has had no communications with an estranged sister for 16 years. And because of the pandemic, and by the way, she mentions in this email to me that she did come down with COVID. She's a young woman, and she's recovered completely. But having the disease made her think that she needed to reach out to her sister. And her sister and her have agreed to have a Zoom conversation for the first time in 16 years.
Wow.
They don't want, my listener is saying, I really don't want to unload baggage, but I'm really tempted.
Interesting.
Yeah. So now there's a communications problem from a listener. What would you counsel?
My goodness. You know, I think the first thing I'd say is that the Zoom medium, the artifice of the device, offers us a little bit of distance, right? You are not walking into the space. So that is good and also perhaps a little tricky, right? When you're in the space with someone, you can sit there, you know, if you don't have anything to say when you're in the same space, it's passable. It's a little harder on Zoom to sit in silence. My thought would be to prepare, like we talked about, questions, prepare things you're going to say. You're going into a communication in which, you know, you've got to present yourself in a way so that you can have an experience on the other person, right? You are affecting someone else. So take some time to think about what are the questions you want to ask of, you know, this estranged family member. You know, what things do you want to tell them that you are going to be able to be in control of and not lose your mind about? And then, you know, if, because you're on Zoom, if it starts to get problematic, if you start to feel the temperature rising inside of you and the rage starting to boil, or the triggers starting to go off and you're starting to want to unload the stuff and say things, you're on Zoom. You can say, you know what, maybe we should continue this conversation at another time and we can go move forward. So let's end the call now. And you push a button and that's it. You don't have to extricate yourself from a physical space. But I think the biggest thing I would say is to prepare. What is it that you want to say? What questions do you want to ask? What squeeze toys do you want to have in your hands so that you can squeeze them when you get upset? And you can keep those under your frame so they have no idea that you're putting your fingernails into your legs, right? That would be my first, those would be my first thoughts.
Right. So, you know, is there a way that, you know, so, you know, on the phone, like if I'm having a conversation on the phone and I'm, you know, it's going south,
Yeah,
I could be like, oh, I've got a call waiting.
yeah,
I really have to jump. I've got a call waiting. And, you know, this person's called 3 times and I really have to take it now. Bye.
yeah.
So is there like, Richard, Richard, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Do you happen to know, Richard, is there like a, like on the TV when you've got snow on the screen? Can we like wipe that? Can we do a Zoom snow where the other person, and we're in an uncomfortable situation? It's like, oh, wait a minute. I just had a Zoom short out. Look at all that snow. We got to go.
Well, not really. Really, the only way you would be able to do something like that is
To
to mute
obfuscate.
well, you would have to say, could you hold on just a moment? And you would stop your video and mute your microphone. That way, your profile picture or blank. I have actually, if I was to stop my video right now, you'd see nothing but black because I have actually a black image instead of a profile because of some of the theater work that I do on Zoom. And then I would turn off my microphone. I would mute my mic, and they won't be able to see or hear me. In which case, I would then be able to rant, right? Oh, it's doing that, and kind of get that out. And then I would come back to the video, then the microphone. Okay, I'm ready to start again. How are you?
You know what
That's
I
the
thought? I
that's the
thought
only way I can think of doing that.
I thought you were going to say that it's like my old ladies in the HOA meeting where they didn't understand the mute button and they'd put themselves on mute by accident. You'd see this little old mouth kind of going away like that. And you'd be like, oh, well, they're out, you know, they don't know how to do it. So goodbye. So you could always just put yourself on mute and just keep on talking, I guess.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress. Garrett, so.
But I mean, you know, this is a new medium. So what are the secrets, right? So you can just freeze and not move, stay still and look like you're frozen and hope that maybe they end the call thinking that the internet crashed. You know, and because they only see a small portion of your room or your world, right? They only get like 2% of where you actually exist because they're looking through this little camera. So, you know, look off somewhere and imagine that there's some crazy thing happening. Somebody walks in and has an emergency, or, you know, there's something going on outside you have to attend to, and you can just, oh my gosh, there's a coyote I have to go save my cat. Excuse me. I'll be right back, and just hop off. You know, they're not going to know what's actually going on around you. So you can use those kind of cues as well.
My son, who does all kinds of business, he's in AI and he does all his business on Zoom right now. What his technique is, he has a lighter. He carries a Zippo lighter all the time. And when he doesn't like the direction the conversation is going, or his point is not being taken in the way he needs it to be taken, he puts his lighter up by the smoke alarm. And the smoke alarm is deafening. And he's got to end the call because that'll go on for a while. So he's got to end the call. So that's his little escape route. If you leave it up to intelligent people, they're going to think of ways, Garrett, to figure out, like you said, how to game this system.
But if it works, sure, yeah.
Richard's giving us a sign. We got to go to quick break. And Richard, do we have a few minutes to speak when we get back? Okay. So I want to reintroduce. I'm speaking with the great Garrett Blair, communications guru, and we're talking during the lockdown, how best to communicate on this platform, which is a 3x5 card that we call Zoom, and our talking heads. How best to make our bodies respond to an authentic person that we are, how best to set our environment up, how to light, how to prepare. What I've gotten out of this hour is, Garrett, if you're going to talk with somebody, it's not spontaneous as you think. Prepare. Like for every interview, I spend about an hour working on compilations of thoughts and questions. I prepare for each interview. You're saying, let's do the same thing if we've got an important conversation on.
Yeah.
Let's not rely on some of the natural clues that we always have used. For example, put your head in your hand, looks interesting. You look interested. No, Zoom, you look bored. Right. So these are some of the things we're learning today. When we get back, we're going to ask Garrett Blair the final question. Don't turn that down. Welcome back. It's Elizabeth Stewart, and I'm speaking with communications guru Garrett Blair, who's made it his life's work to teach us how best to communicate our authentic self. And he's got a real challenge these days because he's counseling his corporate clients how to communicate business on Zoom. And I thought, well, let's ask him some questions that he's learned how to craft his strategy for his corporate clients. Let's ask him some questions about how we can do this during the lockdown in which we're going to be communicating on Zoom. And here's the final question for you, Garrett. But before we get to that one, I believe you've got a comment based on what we said previously.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, this is a new medium and it so easily feels like it should just be easy to use. FaceTime, Skype, Zoom, GoToMeetings, family or friends. I think the thing that it's important to consider is, why are you going to use this medium for this communication? If you're calling up your mother or you're calling up a family member, it's not just like, hey, let's just FaceTime and pretend like we're on the phone, but it's going to be video. Have a reason. There's a reason we're using the video chat versus a phone call. If you're using in a corporate sense or you're with your work and employees, what is the purpose of this Zoom call versus could we do this over the phone, an email, a memo, or recorded video? Make sure you're being purposeful with the use of the device. I think that's the one thing that I would take is, from my directing experience years ago, you're always considering, why am I using this element? And we shouldn't just use it because it's here. We should use it because the use of it enhances the purpose of our goal.
The message is the medium.
Yeah.
Yeah. The message is the medium. So the final question I have for you is, this is my own question. How many people can be on a Zoom call? And the second part of that question, have you counseled people on interacting in a large Zoom call? And the reason I'm asking that is because I've done some lectures where it's interactive on Zoom, and I'll be the lecturer and there'll be 50 people in little squares on Zoom. And there's always one. In the last lecture I did, there was one that did a handstand. They shut down the whole lecture because your eyes are drawn to that.
Yeah.
And it's attention seeking, I realized.
Yeah.
But I wonder if you could counsel us on large Zoom events like that, how best to handle ourselves.
So Zoom, you can have, it's sort of limitless in this point. There are you can have a webinar license, you can have all sorts of things and have large groups and large things. First, I would counsel, remember that their faces aren't the things that see you, the camera sees you. So when you are communicating to a large group, you're still looking into the camera. The second thing I would say is you have multiple ways of interacting on Zoom. Ask people to use the chat, ask questions and get them involved in the chat. Use your breakout room, create activities and explorations and brainstorms people are going to do in small groups, and then they come back and they share, you know, a representative from the group shares with everybody. Use the features at your disposal to create different ways of interacting, right? And like I said, try to avoid thinking that you have to speak to the screen and all these faces, because all anybody's going to see you do is looking down and around. They're not going to feel like you're talking to them. So remember to look into the camera and use the features to create different types of activities and engagement.
And just, finally, I would be interested to know during this time, Richard, how many minutes do we have? We
We're
have
down
just
to 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Oh, well, then I just have to say goodbye to the greatest communications guru, Garrett Blair, who's helped us through some of the conundrums of communicating a message. And what I just learned in this last segment from Garrett is be purposeful about the medium that you're choosing. If you're going to choose the phone, know why you're choosing the phone. If you're going to choose FaceTime, know why you're doing that. Make the medium fit the message. So if you don't have to call the estranged sister on Zoom so that she doesn't see that you've become very wrinkled in the last 16 years, don't use use a phone. Garrett, thank you so very much for all your tips.
My pleasure. Thank you.